Hey everyone, Thyworm here with a solo self-found guide on Vaal Temples. You'll learn what they are, why you should care about them, how to get them and more in this video. There are timestamps. This video is specifically for those playing solo self-found, but the knowledge about Vaal Temples will serve you just as well in trade. If you are interested in making profit from Vaal Temples, which you don't have to in SSF, I've linked a video from Pelstron in the description below. He explains this very well. Let's start with why you should care about Vaal Temples. What is in it for you? The main reason is loot, and specifically a version of corrupted items that are hard to find, the so-called double corrupted items. What double corruption does is, to no one's surprise, do a double corruption on an item. Let me explain. Normally you can easily corrupt an item once by using a Vaal orb on it, on pretty much any item. But once an item is corrupted, you cannot add another corruption, normally speaking. Corrupting items can be useful because, for example, if you corrupt a body armor or weapon, there's a chance you add or change an existing implicit. In the case of body armors, which typically don't have implicits, you just add an implicit. This is almost always an upgrade, especially because implicit can add levels to socketed gems, meaning you get higher level skill gems, meaning your build gets a lot better. In case of weapons, which typically have implicits, you change them by corrupting it. You're overriding the existing implicit. These implicits, these corrupted ones, they can be very good, so regular single corrupted items can already be valuable. What happens with a double corrupt is that you basically corrupt twice in a single go, adding potentially two corrupted implicits to an item. It's like the game would allow you to use a Vaal orb twice on the same item. This can result in very powerful items. These double corrupted items drop constantly from special chests in Vaal Temples and are highly sought after. It's the primary reason why Vaal Temples are so good. This means you can expect from a Vaal Temple map a bunch of double corrupted uniques, jewels and other items that could elevate your build or inspire you to create another build. The double corrupted items are so rare because the only other way to get a double corrupted item is by running the incursion leak mechanic. That is when you encounter alpha in your maps. This is actually the next video, incursion, so stay tuned for that. Suffice to say, it's a lot of effort to set that up, so as a result, people only double corrupt really good items using the incursion mechanic. Vaal Temples, on the other hand, drop random uniques with double corrupted implicits and random other gear. You don't get to choose, but you may get lucky, which is what makes this so interesting. So, what are Vaal Temples? For all intents and purposes, they are just regular maps with one big difference, and that is their implicit modifier, which says area contains 10 additional guarded Vaal vessels. The whole reason Vaal Temples are good is because of these Vaal vessels, which drop the double corrupted items. We will discuss the vessels in more detail soon. Let's first look at the map. Something you need to know is that Vaal Temples are always tier 16 maps, the highest tier. They're always corrupted. You can't find this map on the Atlas. You don't need to complete this map for Atlas bonus, making it completely optional. It has a pretty horrible layout and a very difficult boss. So these Vaal vessels better make up for all of that, and they do. Let's talk about how you get these Vaal Temple maps. There are a few ways. The most common way is by corrupting tier 16 maps. Each time you use a Vaal orb on a tier 16 map, you have a roughly 2% chance to turn that map into a Vaal Temple. The second way you get Vaal Temples is by using Kirac missions and reports. I'll do a deep dive on Kirac in another video. The third way is by divination cards, like the Lingering Remnants, which you can turn in for a Vaal Temple map. This league, 3.23, this card is pretty common, so keep it on your loot filter in solo self-found. And finally, you can sell 5 Vaal Temples to a vendor, and the vendor will give you 1 uncorrupted Vaal Temple back. I would never do this, but you can if you want. Because Vaal Temples are just as hard to get as your average VTuber, you can't sustain these in SSF, so don't sell them 5 to 1. Up next, modifying your Vaal Temple map. As I explained, by default there are 10 Vaal vessels in the map, and you primarily run these maps because of the Vaal vessels. that is where the items come from. There are ways to increase the number of Vaal vessels because map modifiers apply to this map just like any other map. In particular, the map modifier effect nodes at the top of the Atlas passive tree increase all map modifiers on any map by 2%. You have 15 of these, so that is 30%. This applies to implicit map modifiers as well, meaning you can have 13 Vaal vessels if you want instead of 10, as 30% of 10 makes for 13 Vaal vessels. As the Vaal vessels are considered strongboxes, also Atlas passive points on strongboxes apply. The ones where strongboxes have a chance to be reopened, for example. 3 nodes exist of 2% for a total of 6% chance. All of this gets particularly interesting if you combine these 2 nodes with the keystone Wandering Path, which disables notable Atlas skills. Those notables, those are the ones that are slightly bigger on the Atlas passive tree, but it doubles the value of small nodes. Now you have 60% increased map modifier effect, that is 16 Vaal vessels, and also a 12% chance to open them again. However, the 60% increased map modifier effect applies to all map modifiers, also the negative ones, which means your maps are all of a sudden incredibly hard to complete. If you go to Wandering Path strategy, you better bring a top class build or you will get absolutely destroyed by most maps. I'm personally not running this strategy, but just running the Vaal Temples normally, with around 11 or 12 Vaal vessels and 6% chance to reopen them. Furthermore, anything else that applies to a normal map also applies to Vaal Temples. You can influence it with either an Exarch. You can use scarabs, you can use sextants, master missions, any league mechanic, etc. It all works. Just to be thorough, as a Vaal Temple is a corrupted rare item, you can use a tainted chaos orb on it to change its affixes. Tainted chaos orbs are very rare, however, so I wouldn't recommend this. If you're stuck with a Vaal Temple you want to run but can't because it has no leech on it or cannot regenerate or some other affix your build can't run, then here's another tip. Collect those Vaal Temples that you cannot run and temporarily take the Atlas passive keynote called Twist of Fate. What this does is modify pretty much everything about a corrupted map, including the actual map itself and all its affixes. You see an example here. I'm putting in a corrupted Vaal Temple I cannot run, and this keynote turns it into a racecourse map with modifiers that I just don't know what they do because, you know, they're unidentified and corrupted. So I just have to pray that it doesn't reflect and that all my specters instantly die. I was lucky this time, it seems. Using this strategy you can also get rid of the bad layout of Vaal Temple, but I honestly don't recommend it in SSF. You will not have the funds to constantly respec your Atlas, and not knowing what map you'll end up with isn't great either, so I say just run the Vaal Temples, only use Twist of Fate for those that have affixes on it that you cannot run. Now it's time to talk about the actual Vaal vessels, your primary objective. They're considered a strongbox, which I mentioned. They spawn 3 packs of monsters when you click on them, and 1 Vaal side boss area. No need to worry about the latter, those Vaal side bosses die pretty much instantly. The Vaal vessels are booby trapped, so make sure to not stand next to them after you activate them because there's a good chance you'll end up dying. Kill the monsters and then it's time for the loot. There's an extensive loot breakdown in a bit, but first let's talk about potentially increasing the loot from the chests. We already discussed how to get more Vaal vessels, but now that you have them, how to influence their loot. This is a little bit of speculation combined with my own experience, but any item rarity or item quantity that applies to the maps also applies to the Vaal vessels. That means the Atlas passive, that ring in the middle, or party members which add 50% quantity, or just affixes on the map itself. Those all impact the Vaal vessels. However, once you're inside of the map, it seems the item rarity and quantity of Vaal vessels doesn't change anymore. Your gear has no impact. League mechanics like the wisps from Affliction have no impact. Altars from Exarch and Ether have no impact. Anything you do inside of the map doesn't influence the quantity and rarity of the Vaal vessels. It only affects the monsters that spawn from the Vaal vessels, but that's not where the value is. This is just good to realize. It also means Magic Find doesn't work. Before we dive into the loot, I want to give a few tips and tricks that I'm using when I'm running this map. 1. It's a bad layout, no doubt about it, but I always take the same approach. I always take a right turn from start to finish. I found that to be a very effective way of running this map. You don't have to think too much. You just take a right turn every time and that's it. Works really well in most cases. 2. Because league mechanics do not impact the loot from Vaal vessels, I typically just ignore league mechanics or do those that are quick and easy. Harbinger, Ritual, Harvest, those work pretty well. I would avoid stuff like Legion or Breach, there's just no room for these monsters to spawn. 3. You can skip the boss if you want. It's a very dangerous boss, they do tons of damage and generally don't drop much of value. There is one exception, which is the cooperation Vaal aspect. Only this boss drops that, and if you're aiming for an adorned jewel, which you can create from 4 different Vaal aspect pieces, you should run this boss. I personally do this, because I just like to create these items from the pieces and literally piece everything together in SSF. But that's also why you play SSF, right? At least it's why I play. I don't care about the value or money or time. I just rather enjoy the exploration and trying to create such a jewel, even though I don't really need it. However, if you play trade or just don't care about this at all, save yourself some frustration and skip the boss. Okay, it's time for the loot breakdown. Starting with the double corrupted uniques. I've already explained why they are so powerful and why you should care. Here you see an actual example. Take this Diadus and just ignore that the uncorrupted version is super shiny. That is not relevant right now. You see the regular Diadus on the left and this is just a pretty common unique item. Should it drop from a Vaal vessel and get double corrupted, now suddenly it has 2 additional implicit modifiers, which are just a 100% upgrade. Increased attack speed and onslaught, which is a buff that grants also attack speed. Pretty good outcome. This is a pure win. Armor pieces tend to drop with implicits that give bonuses to socketed gems, making your skills more powerful. Gloves can drop with curses on hit, which is really great. There are plenty of outcomes. It's a gamble what drops, of course, but these items can be incredibly valuable. It's good to realize that the loot tables and unique drop rates still apply, so you will often find common uniques that are double corrupted, but hardly ever a super rare unique that is double corrupted. But hey, you never know. Common uniques with a double corrupted implicit, however, can be incredibly good. Something else that's interesting about corrupting unique items is that for certain unique jewels, you can only get them as a result of corrupting a regular jewel. Some unique jewels do not drop, but can only be received from corrupting a crimson jewel, for example. As Vaal vessels do this process for you, and they can and do in fact drop a lot of jewels, there's a chance you get very rare, hard to get unique jewels. It's just a nice add-on in SSF, you might get lucky. Talking about jewels, you can get 2 types of double corrupted jewels. You cannot get cluster jewels from this. The same principles apply, so you have abyss jewels and regular jewels and you get 2 additional implicits from the corruption. You see a few examples of corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you, which is pretty much mandatory for any build. You get tons of these in the Vaal Temple map, it's very useful. The rest of the implicits are primarily good against ailments and you can use these to reach ailment immunity, for example. Once again, it's not easy to get in SSF otherwise, so it's very useful to pick these up and save them for a rainy day or use them right away. Third category, 6-links. You will drop multiple 6-links because corruption tends to produce 6-linked items. They're typically not good, but at least they sell for 20 orbs of fusing, a welcome thing in SSF. And then you will drop single corrupted or just regular corrupted skill gems, meaning that you either drop a level 21 skill or support gem with up to 20% quality, or you will drop a level 1 skill or support gem with 23% quality. You also drop a ton of Vaal gems. This is all incredibly useful because you can also sell these gems to a vendor. Gems with gem quality on them sell for gem cutter prisms, So that's once again very useful in SSF. It's hard to get, especially in this league. Furthermore, you drop lots of fragments, which you can put in your map device and summon at Ziri if you put all 4 in, or you put a few in with your maps, and then each fragment gives your map 5% quantity. It's free map quantity basically. It's always a good thing in solo self-found. And finally, you can drop special essences, which you otherwise only would get by corrupting specific essences in a map. The essence of insanity or horror, for example. These are rare but incredibly powerful if you know how to craft around them. Either way, fun to have. You can even just gamble with them in SSF, see what happens. And Vaal Temples are a decent source for these essences. Finally, Vaal Temples drop many maps, corrupted maps, all tiers. They even have up to 20% quality on them. It's basically a bunch of free maps, which once again in SSF is sort of a present. Once you are running tier 16 maps, you shouldn't have issues sustaining most maps, but still it's nice to have. It uses the favorite maps system, so you can end up with your favorite map corrupted, 8 modifiers, 20% quality, bunch of pack size, and just run those chosen maps. In general, for some reason, the Vaal Temples have a tendency to mirror a bunch of items as well, so you may just get a copy of whatever item just dropped. I'm not exactly sure how that fits in with the Vaal and corruption theme, but hey, it's a welcome change. I don't mind a copy in SSF. And that's it. I hope you learned something. I hope you can use this knowledge in your own game, whether it's SSF or trade. If you have any questions or feedback, let me know. I already reshot this video once based on the feedback, and I'm willing to do that again. Please subscribe for more SSF guides. I appreciate it. Thanks for making it to the end. See you soon. Love you all. Bye bye.